Greetings, Dr. Joseph Martin here. Our topic for discussion today is colossal callousness of civilization. The colossal callousness of civilization. So the subtitles could be numerous. They could be Occupy Freedom and Occupy Individuation. It's clear for us who are philosophical anthropologists and social cultural historians like myself and many others in this century who have come to realize that as we have studied all the civilizations and societies of the world from the smallest, earliest small scale societies of bands and tribes and chiefdoms all the way up to modern very complex civilizations of industrialized nation states and the end of the empires here, that there is an ongoing challenge and almost some kind of like an oil and water uh, incapacity to mix the needs and the desires and the growing kind of power or force of the society or the civilization or the state with the needs and the rights of the individuals as they are. Now, because we're just moving out of the Dark Ages, so to speak, into a new stage of enlightenment and what we Hindus call the Dwapara Yuga here, which only started in 1872. So we're just over about 140 years into it. So we're just kind of little babes in the woods as it is in terms of psychological maturation of individuation. Now, Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist, psychiatrist, was very clear in all his public books, and you'd want to read many of them, that in fact this time, the 20th century, which is when he was living, is a time of just incredible conflict between the power of the state, which was becoming more and more fascist. Certainly it was during his life, the First and Second World Wars, and all of Europe turning into fascist states, and the needs for the individual to what he called individuate, which is a necessary human process that is inescapable, undeniable, and unstoppable. People will not suffer their nullification forever. They have a need to become unique. They have a need to become individuated. It's a psychological transformational process, which is the foundation of Jungian analytic depth psychology and dream analysis. I myself have gone through that process my entire life and have taken many other thousands of clients and friends through the same process. This is a process that will carry on for the rest of time and space as our society on Earth evolves. And, although there are many attempts in the 20th and 21st centuries to deny human rights, it's very clear that some progress has been made in terms of women's rights, colored rights, the civil rights in America and worldwide, South Africa, gay, lesbian, and transvestite, bisexual, transsexual rights, and the rights of ethnic groups to be surviving into the next, indigenous rights surviving into the next few centuries, the rights of children, of babies, of animals, and so on. And now, at every step when these rights are claimed by those who are feeling oppressed, they're just as easily taken away by the state. For instance, now in 2013, as we're preparing for the Sochi Winter Olympics in Russia, we know that the Russian state has taken away all the rights of gays and lesbians. And in fact, I just heard yesterday on the news that there's some states in parts of the third world that feel that all gays and lesbians should simply be burned alive. And so obviously we're at a very early stage in human evolution where the state can actually make these dictates and rule people and crush and kill them. But their spirit is always going to be there. Now, Karl Polanyi was a great economic anthropologist and social philosopher of the 20th century. He was born in the late 1800s in Vienna, and he finished his life in Pickering, Ontario, Canada. He was a great theoretical pragmatist. He was given a grant by the Ford Foundation to study all the ancient and modern civilizations and to decide what were the conflicts, the inherent conflicts between state societies and individuals. You can read his book, The Great Transformation, and I highly recommend it, and particularly the conclusions, in which he states this, that there's a constant battle between the force used by the state to take away all the human rights of the individuals. And the discovery of society is thus either going to become the end of freedom for individuals or the beginning of the rebirth of freedom for individuals. And that choice, whether society as it's evolving is going to be the end of the birth of freedom of individuals or the beginning of the rebirth, all depends on you and all of us. Now, we have many examples, of course, in society where individuals have fought for their freedoms on behalf of not just themselves, but the group that they were representing. You know some of those examples. We have, of course, Gandhi in India defeating the English Empire and bringing Britain down to its knees. And actually, is the last stroke, the death knell for the British Empire. We have Rosa Parks in America, the colored woman who decided she needed to and chose to go on a bus. And of course, that led to Martin Luther King Jr. and so many others. And most commonly, we have one great example now of Nelson Mandela, who single-handedly, through a great series of compressions of his own conscience and consciousness, to create the greatest courage and strength, defeated the old apartheid regime in South Africa and created a new society, a nation state in South Africa, not without a lot of communication and kind of dialogue and diplomacy that showed the nobility of character and strength of character that comes when a person, an individual, decides to individuate and become unique and become all they can be and then serve the rest of humanity. It's basically the hero-heroine's journey that Joseph Campbell, my good friend, used to speak about all the time. And each one of us needs to be a hero or heroine in our own life. The one thing that will stop the fascist states from gaining further control is that when you become the hero in your own life and stand up and choose freedom and occupy freedom, and it all is to be done in a non-violent way, non-violent communication. It's an all-inclusive communication in the one circle, and finding ways and activities and tactics and events that will help support you coming together and sharing this and helping others to liberate themselves as unique individuals. The focus is always on individuation as a psychological, spiritual, emotional, social, relational process. Now, perhaps the greatest individual of all time in history, of all civilizations, perhaps for the rest of time that we have here on the planet, which hopefully is millions of years to come, we've already been here 4 million years, is Jesus Christ. And one of my favorite sayings by Jesus is that I have conquered the world, so fear not. Hope for everything, and you can do greater things than I have done. I have conquered the world. You know the famous story in the New Testament where the devil offers him all the powers in the world and the powers over the people and political power and religious power and so on, and he just throws those aside and decides he knew in advance that this was not for him. Well, how did he conquer the world? He conquered the world by finding his true nature and living his true nature and speaking his truth authentically in every word, thought, deed, and action, and showing this to others through great love and compassion and, in fact, sacrifice, which was his greatest bliss. He is the Lord of the dance, as one of those famous Shaker songs go, and you can dance with him because he conquered death, he conquered all his fears, he conquered society, he conquered the Romans, he conquered the Jewish Sadducees and Pharisees, and he was able to let everything come forward in his life under the feeling of just generosity, kindness, purity of heart, and service to all humanity. And so that is the greatest story of an individual creating his own perfect freedom consciously and superconsciously to enable all others to thereby do the same with themselves. This is the true nature of the coming of the second Christ, the Christ consciousness, which in the 21st century is here and abundant and abiding and flowing, and you can open to this reality, and this will be your future when you can feel this and see this and become this yourself. I'd like just to close with a quote from Liu Xiaobo, who was given the Nobel Peace Prize in 2010, and he is a democratic freedom fighter in China, still alive. He was born in 1955. And his autobiography, which just came out, is called No Enemies, No Hatred, Liu Xiaobo. And this is a quote from him. I have no enemies and no hatred. None of the police who have watched, arrested, or interrogated me, none of the prosecutors who have indicted me, and none of the judges who will judge me are my enemies. I look forward to the day when our country will be a land of free expression, a country where the words of each citizen will get equal respect, a country where different values, ideas, beliefs, and political views can compete with one another even as they peacefully coexist, a country where expression of both majority and minority views will be secure, and in particular, where political views that differ from those of the people in force or power will be fully respected and protected. A country where all political views will be spread out beneath the sun for citizens to choose among, and every citizen will be able to express views without the slightest of fears. A country where it will be impossible to suffer persecution for expressing a political view. I hope that I will be the last victim in China's long record of treating words as crimes. That book was published in 2012 by Cambridge, Massachusetts Harvard University Press. This, just to go back to the overview of what we're speaking about here, the colossal callousness of civilization, society, and nation states in particular at this time, and their impugning and stealing and taking away and crushing the rights of individuals to have the rights to freedom and pursuit of happiness, pursuit of love, whoever they choose to love, and have equal kind of access to education and everything, natural resources and so on. This struggle will not go away. It probably will be never ending. And because compression of state control is such a wonderful thing for us, because it impacts us in a way when we hit the wall, we're up against the need to liberate ourselves every day in every way, with every means we have. And it all works perfectly when you do it with perfect spiritual and human love, respect, kindness, with great patience and forbearance and great purity of heart and great joy, in fact. And also, you need to take yourself through a well tried and true psychological process, such as Jungian depth psychology, where you can deal with all your own demons, your own shadow, your own issues, and not project them onto someone else. Own them, transmute them, move them up to the heart, and come back with the purity of heart as the hero and the heroine in your own life once you've done your inner sacred alchemical journey. When you've completed it, the love and the power and the joy and the respect you'll have for yourself and all others is self-evident. And I wish you well on your journey. This is part of the process of our I Am Self-Worth online coaching, and I wish you well on your journey. Take good care. There are lots of people who have done this in the history of all civilizations, and many today who are. So occupy love, occupy freedom, occupy your own individuation.